Hello, friends. This is your friend Kent C. Dodds, and I'm joined by my friend Daria Caraway. Say hi.
Hey everyone.
So, Daria, I'm excited to join you. This is the first time we've actually talked, but I've been following you on Twitter for a while, and it's been just a pleasure. And I'd love for our audience to get to know you. So, could you just give us an intro to yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Daria. I'm a software engineer currently at Workday. I guess I'm a full stack software engineer. I've been working as a software engineer for about 6 years now. Previously, got a computer science and business degree at university, and kind of had to choose between which one of those I wanted to, and ended up in software engineering and been here ever since.
Wow, that's cool. I actually did information systems as a major because I felt like it was a good mesh of business and computer science. So yeah, that's kind of interesting that our sort of related kind of interest there. So
Yeah.
when you first got into the industry, I'd love to hear about how what that experience was like for you. Switching from school to actually getting your first job and stuff.
Yeah, it was interesting. So my major at my university, my college had four different computer science majors. We had like computer science games, computer science, computer engineering. I did computer science and business. And so I took like the whole CS curriculum and then a couple electives shy of a business curriculum as well. And so a lot of people in my major were kind of deciding what they wanted to do. A lot of my friends ended up being like product managers or managers. And I decided to go software route. And so I kind of did the whole interviewing at all of the companies for new grad positions. But I really wanted to. I'm from Boulder originally in Colorado, and I went to school in California. And I really wanted to come home. So I ended up working for an ad tech company close to where my family is in Boulder. And it was a pretty small company. So I got to work on a bunch of different types of technology while I was there.
Cool, yeah, and so naturally that led to the full stack sort of idea for you, where you're at a small company, you wear lots of hats. What was the tech you were working in?
Totally. Yeah. At the ad tech company, it was in PHP at the beginning and JavaScript. It was like a PHP server and JavaScript on the client. I was there and helped move their big JavaScript client to TypeScript. And then we also moved it from Angular to Angular JS to Angular 2. And we also moved the PHP server to Scala. So it was kind of like all in flight while I was there, which kind of contributed to having to work on so many different things. And that was a cool experience to just like get exposed to so many different languages and learn them with all of my coworkers.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. That opportunity that you had to like experience that migration. I There are so like most companies, I think, as long as they live long enough, are probably going to have to migrate at some point, and having the
Totally.
opportunity to migrate both the front end and the back end all at once. I'm sure that you learned a ton from that.
Yeah, a lot. And it was interesting too, because it wasn't like we had a whole bunch of experts on our team of the technologies we were moving to. So we kind of all had to figure it out together, which was like a really nice learning experience.
That's very cool. And so, would you say that now you're not on that company anymore? You're at Workday, right? Is that right?
Yeah,
Workday.
yeah.
Yeah. And so at Workday, was that your next company, or do you have a couple companies in between?
Yeah, no, I went from that ad tech company to Workday. The ad tech company was, I want to say, about 300 employees, so it was like pretty small. And then Workday is, I don't know, somewhere around 12,000, so it's a much bigger jump.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm guessing, like with COVID, you've been full time at home. Did you start at home, or
No, I've been at Workday for almost 3 years now, so I got some good time in the office before we all had to pack up and work from home.
how have you liked working from home?
Um, it's not bad. I definitely miss seeing people in the hallways, I guess. In Boulder, there's like a big culture of going out during lunch to go rock climbing or on a hike, and I definitely miss that aspect of it. But it's been okay. I'm definitely adjusted to it now. I say that, but we're a year in, and my partner and I just rearranged our house so that our desk could be in different rooms. So I don't know. I think we're still getting used to it.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely. So just the other day, I was meeting with some people, and we're local, but we have to meet virtually. And one of them said, "Hey, maybe we should start doing these meetings like in person again." And originally, like when we'd first gotten started, I was like, "Man, I just love this. It's so convenient. Just do it over Zoom, and everything's great." But when they said that, I actually thought about it for a second. I'm like, no, no, I really want to meet in person again. I'll wear 12 masks if I have to. I just need to be in person. So I'm definitely the type of person. I don't mind being in my box down here in my basement,
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah, I'm totally ready to meet up with people again. So so hopefully you'll get to go back to the office here pretty soon.
Yeah, definitely.
I definitely prefer working remote full time, but I just want to be able to see people. So anyway, um, when you switched over from the ad tech company to Workday, what were you hired to do? Like, are were you? I mean, you have experience with PHP, with Scala, with Angular 1, Angular 2. What did they hire you to do?
Yeah, it was kind of a jump. So I had been doing all of those full stack things for a while, and then I got hired at Workday to be a front end React engineer. I had a little bit of experience with React when I was in college. Actually, I interned full time at a startup that was also doing a little bit of React, but it had been a while. So I got hired at Workday to be a React front end engineer, and it was interesting. I had been used to like seeing the full scope of the stack, not necessarily just back end, front end, but all the way into like data consumption and then data processing and then feeding that data back to the client so that your users can see it, and moving directly into React. But it was interesting because the team I started on at Workday, they were actually also in the middle of migrating their Angular JS application to React. So for that reason, it felt kind of familiar. They were migrating also from JavaScript to TypeScript. So it was another one of those instances where the code had been around long enough and they were ready to kind of clean it all up and get it a little bit started over.
Yeah, totally. So I'm sure your experience really came in handy with that migration too, because there are good ways to migrate and not as good ways. I'm sure that you could, if you haven't already, you could put together a talk for migrating code bases because you seem to have quite a bit of experience with that. It's not always fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a different kind of challenge, I think. It's
Mm.
one thing to like write your own code. It's another thing to be thrown in there in, I don't know, 10-year-old code that has passed through hundreds of people's hands and try to figure out what is going on.
Yeah, I can only imagine. That's fun. Uh, so I actually had a similar switch over from Angular JS over to React. I never built anything in Angular 2. I was starting to get into it and like give talks and stuff, but I never really actually had the experience that you did with Angular 2. But I did decide I'm kind of done with Angular JS. I want to move on to React. And so I switched companies and switched frameworks in the process. Um, but most of my career has always been consuming backends. So I never really wrote much backend code. I did some in school, for little projects that I would do. At PayPal, I did write plenty of Node and backend code stuff there, but it was always like this middle tier. So we had the
Sure.
further down backend, they were doing database stuff, and we were just like marshaling calls to them. So we were basically front end just a little bit on the back end side, and we would make some of our own APIs to hit. But I spent most of my time on the front end. I kind of decided I wanted to be primarily front end. I would like grab all of the things, all the tickets and stuff that were front end. I'd volunteer for those. What's it been like for you? You had plenty of experience on the back end and front end, and you come into Workday doing mostly front end. Has that been like a pleasant change for you, or where do you feel like you prefer spending more of your time? Do you like to specialize just in React, or would you like to be more general?
Yeah. So it's funny. I'm actually on a different team in Workday now doing full stack work again. So
Oh, there you
I
go.
think that I definitely learned that I prefer to be more general and kind of like see the whole picture. But at the same time, like even though I've worked on backends and front ends kind of in different intervals of my career, JavaScript is always the common denominator, right? Like I've worked in, I don't know, 5 or 6 backend languages, but the front end is always in JavaScript. So in some ways I feel like I'm special, like I'm a little bit a specialist in JavaScript, which a lot of my content and talks and stuff will be catered towards the front end. But I definitely prefer being able to see the whole picture and like architect a solution from the top to bottom. I found myself getting a little bit antsy just like consuming things that I have no like control over. If it wasn't in the best format for the client, like instead of going and making it work from the full stack, just having to make it work on the client, I definitely prefer to kind of architect it from the whole picture.
Yeah, it definitely is frustrating from a consumer standpoint to work with APIs that aren't great and not really have too much to do about it. Like you can file a ticket or something, but who knows when that's going to get prioritized. So being able to just fix it yourself, I'm sure is nice.
Yeah, and I don't this isn't everyone's experience, but I've just found that like when I can speak both languages, it makes the collaboration a little bit easier. There's less of like trying to translate from what this person cares about to what we care about. It's more of like we're all building it together. And that might just be like from the circumstances I've been in. I'm sure that you can be a front end specialist and also have like that great open collaboration. I've just found that it's easier for me when I can like fully speak to everything that's going on.
I think that's really critical. I'm definitely on the specialist side of things. I made a conscious decision to specialize, and I feel like I've actually said this on another podcast where I feel like being a quote full stack developer is very difficult to do because you can't go as deep on whatever part of the stack you have to be more yeah, shallow sounds bad, but that's not what I mean. But yeah, you can't go as deep. And
Totally.
so that's kind of been my reasoning for going as a specialist. But even regardless of whether you decide specialist or generalist, I think that it's really important that you understand your level of abstraction and then one level below it, and then all the levels, at least the connection points of all other things that you talk to. And so that means for a JavaScript developer, you understand React, and then you also understand the DOM, and have at least a conversational idea. And then you also understand HTTP, and so you know how to like integrate with whatever it is that you're talking with. So I totally agree with you. It's really important to at least be conversational. It sounds like though, like being a generalist has been really effective and useful for you. So can you speak to, I guess, a little bit on some of the reasons that you feel like it's really useful to be a generalist, or maybe there's engineers listening in, or even new engineers listening in who are trying to make this decision on whether they want to go deep in something specific or be general. So what are some of your thoughts and experiences?
Yeah, I think for one, I just prefer it. Like it keeps me interested. I feel like whichever one is more interesting to you, that is the more important one because that means that you'll be more curious and you'll be willing to dive in deep. Even if you're only learning a language and you're only going to use it for 6 months, you'll be more willing to do a deep dive in that 6 months as opposed to just like getting the job done and moving on. So that's something that I've had to learn is even if I'm picking up a language for 6 months, a year, I've been the server I work on right now is in Kotlin, and that is a completely new language to me. And I've been working on it for about a year now. It's important to take the time, even if it's like a short pass by, to really understand how things work. And then in that case, you can almost become like a mini specialist in lots of different areas. Also, too, I mentioned how like JavaScript has always been the constant. So it's not like when you're a generalist, you don't have to just know everything. You can pick a couple things to know better than the other things you know. And for me, that is JavaScript. And in the most recent past been React. Um, but yeah, I think it just helps me in general to be able to communicate with everyone in a way that everyone else understands. I've been in a lot of situations where it feels like we have front end people or back end people, maybe we have data people and machine learning people, and it feels like we're all having six different conversations. And nobody can really find like that common ground with each other. I've kind of figured out that one of my strengths in my career is being that person in the middle that can communicate with the ML team and connect them with the data team and connect the data team to the front end team and the back end team. And it's been great. Yeah, it's been fun.
That really sounds invaluable, actually. And you mentioned that you don't mind, even if it's going to be a couple months, really learning and understand. For me, if I have to do something that's outside of my specialization, I am like, it's basically like I'm shopping where I'm in and out as fast as I can possibly be. And I really don't feel comfortable outside of my specialization. Um, and I just don't want to be there and I don't want to be the one to do it. And so I often wasn't. And luckily for me, any company that I worked at, there were other people who could fill that space and I had plenty of stuff to do.
Totally.
Now, it could have been gone the other way where, oh well, if you're not willing to do this, then like what are you even here for? Like what would you say you do here? But yeah, for me, that's actually worked out. But I can see how being a generalist, and just like having a generalist mindset, being willing to say, okay, it's only going to be for a few months, but I'm really going to get this, and I'm going to do a really good job with this. I think that's valuable. Maybe a lot of my problem has been just a character weakness of being impatient and wanting to move on, do what I want. But you also mentioned something else I thought was interesting, is that you're because you have a pretty great understanding of these different levels, you're able to facilitate communication and help everybody get on the same page. To me, that sounds a lot like the sort of thing a manager would do, and I'm interested to know whether that's ever something that you're interested in the future, or if you really just enjoy being a coder all the time.
Yeah, it's interesting. I watched a pretty popular talk where I finally, for the first time, it clicked what my role was, and it is described as this idea of doing glue work, right? And I think in some ways, pushing myself to be a generalist, I've almost made myself the glue between like lots of different groups of stakeholders, and maybe not even technical. Like in the same ways that I can communicate to different parts, people in different parts of the stack, I also find myself pretty good at talking to non-technical stakeholders. I'm my team scrum master, so in my role that means being able to talk to all of these different stakeholders, managing timelines between different groups of people, which does sound a lot like being a manager. I think I'm on that path, and I think I'm on that path in some ways because of how much different type of work I've picked up. Um, but yeah, I think probably in a year or 2 years, I'm probably looking at becoming an engineering manager, which I'm excited for. But that is a whole other adventure, I think.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that the interesting thing that I'm taking away from what you're saying is it sounds like this has been pretty intentional for you, and or you've been at least thoughtful about the type of work that you pick up. I think that you could probably be a generalist and still be a coder all the time, but it sounds like you have kind of intentionally put yourself in the way of these different opportunities to be the glue between these different layers.
Yeah, that's very kind of you to say. I think it didn't feel like that at the beginning. I think, in the same way that you mentioned, just always picking up the front end tickets because that's what you felt most inclined to do. I have a character flaw of never being able to say no. So when my manager would come to me and be like, there's this integration we have to do, nobody knows anything about the code, it's not documented anywhere. By the way, it's in Scala. I think you should do it. Like, I can't say no. I have to do it. And so after enough of those experiences, I kind of ended up where I am and then realized that I like it. And if I didn't like it, I maybe would have been better at saying no to some of these opportunities. Um, but yeah, I
Hmm.
think there's definitely cognizant decisions that you can make on a daily basis to kind of guide yourself in whichever path that you want. When I'm doing Scrum Mastery things for my team, I always try to make sure that we have work in our sprint that interests everyone. And if there's someone who wants to take on more back end work and maybe they haven't done so, we give them space to pick up a back end ticket. And feel like they can take it all the way through and be successful. And so there's definitely, depending on your situation, room to make these decisions to figure out which one you want to be.
That's a great point. And something else you mentioned makes me think of something else I think is important, and that is, you just said if there's somebody who wants to do kind of more back end, then we'll give them some more of that. How would you possibly know that that's what they want unless they're communicating with you about what they want? So is that something that you have done? You maybe through your actions. It sounds like at the beginning you were just mostly I'll just do whatever, and so you were the go-to. Um, or like, do people tell you, hey, I want to get more into the front end stuff, can you give me more of those tickets, or how does that typically work?
Yeah, sometimes it's tricky because, like I was when I started, I don't think people necessarily know which they want to do, especially if it's a language you've never used before. Like maybe you're on my team and you're doing a lot of TypeScript. Kotlin seems like a big jump. And so it can seem scary, and maybe they like that person needs like a little bit of a nudge to get over there. And then once they are, they really like it.
Mm.
I try to just flat out ask when we have new people on our team, like, hey, we're a full stack team, but you don't have to do anything. We can find work that you enjoy, whether it's on the back end or the front end. And I'll just flat out ask. And a lot of times they'll be like, oh, I mean, I think it'd be cool to do back end work, but I'm a little bit nervous and I don't want to slow the team down. And just like making sure that they know that that's not an issue. We have enough time, we have enough resources to help them learn. And I think that's not the case for everybody. I think our team is in a really privileged situation to be able to take the time to learn something new that we're not necessarily familiar with. So if you are interested in being a generalist, maybe being on a team that has space for you to be able to pick up new technologies, I think might be kind of an important feature to look out for.
Yeah, that's a feature of a team. Yeah, that makes tons of sense. And I think that um, it's really awesome of you as a scrum master to take time and ask. I've had scrum masters and also managers who were really interested in me and what I wanted in my career and everything, and others that just I'm sure they were well intentioned, but they just obviously did not care at
Right.
all. Basically, our one on ones were basically like a status report. Like it was just not useful at all. And so yeah, finding it sounds like you'd be a great manager, I guess is what I'm
Oh,
trying to say. So
thanks.
that's
I tell my manager you said so.
yeah, that's great. Um, yeah, so it's communicating, I think, is really really valuable, especially when we're trying to be intentional about our career choices and what direction we go, whether we want to be a generalist or specialist. Has it ever been in like have you ever tried to make the decision or make a change in the direction your career is going? Like, oh, I'm starting to go in this direction. I actually don't want my career to go that way.
Yeah, yeah. When I first started on like the front end only team at Workday, I was on that team for about a year, and so that's kind of where I racked up on my React knowledge, and like newer features of TypeScript or JavaScript that I hadn't seen before. So I spent a year kind of like really in React land, and I liked it, and I liked being able to do a deep dive, and become more of a specialist in that area. But at the end of the day, I kind of went to my manager and I was like, hey, I don't know that I want to be a front end engineer for much longer. Like this has been really great, but I just personally feel like I am much more interested in being more of a generalist. And I got to look for a new position on a different team that was structured a little bit differently at the same company with like full support from everyone around me. And so that was a really nice opportunity because I love the company that I'm at and I didn't have to jump ship in order to change my direction. But I'm sure that that wouldn't be the case for everyone. And sometimes maybe it is necessary to jump ship in order to kind of like change direction because depending on what company you work for, what organization you work for, sometimes like the way teams are structured just might not be the way that you want it to be in order to be happy and successful.
Oh, that's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. I'll share one of my experiences that made me think of, and it was the first company that I worked at. I'd been there as an intern for about a year and a half before I graduated from college and converted to full time. And it was very difficult. I was only there for 4 months after I graduated, in large part because it was very difficult for people that I worked with, who were all amazing, by the way. All of the engineers that I worked with were amazing, I should say. Um, but it was just very difficult for me to get any of the really interesting tasks because I was always kind of seen as the intern, even if they like, no, no, you're not an intern, you're great. But like I was just kind of seen as and aside from that, there were just some really brilliant engineers that if there was a hard task, it was always going to go to the brilliant engineers. And maybe there was also like a little bit of fear on my part of even asking, and I might have been able to make my way around asking. But part of the reason that I left so soon was I realized here I am never going to be able to do the really awesome stuff that I'm seeing them all do. And so
Mhm.
for me, I had to make a job change to start leveling up and different things like that. So yeah, you definitely. I think it's a good idea to occasionally just stop and think about what do I want, and are the things that I'm doing now going to get me to where I want to go?
Definitely. Yeah, that's a good point. I've definitely been in and seen situations like that where you feel like the seniors or principals on your team are getting all of the cool work and you're just kind of also there doing things sometimes. That's why I feel like having this space to learn and being in an environment that really supports learning, whether or not you choose to be a generalist or a specialist, is going to help you go in either one of those directions. Something too that came to my mind, you were talking earlier about being on the front end, but doing kind of like the front end of the back end in some ways. And for a long time, I
Yeah.
saw myself as full stack, but I didn't really do like the front end of the front end. I was more of like a back end of the front end. Like we were both maybe in the middle, but in
Uh-huh.
different ways. And so even within being like a back end or front end, there's so many different things that you can specialize in or generalize in. Is that a word? Also, too, it doesn't even necessarily have to be like a backend language or a front end language. I just spent a month on my team working on our continuous integration pipeline and learning Groovy for Jenkins and Gradle, which is a build tool. Like, there's so many parts of what we do as software engineers that is so much broader than just being like a React expert or a Java expert. There's so many other pieces that always need to be done. And if you're looking to put yourself out there, like working on the CI pipeline might be a good example. Trying to spiff up like the test automations might be a good example. There's just so many opportunities in what we do to step out of your comfort zone.
And I think it's really useful, especially early on, but even at any time, because this industry changes so fast, to step outside of your comfort zone. Admittedly, I'm very bad at that. I really like my comfort zone, and I like to
Yeah.
stay where I'm at. I don't mind being on the edge of whatever. I'm talking specifically about React or testing stuff. I don't mind being on the edge of that stuff, but it's still within my specialization. And there's probably like I know I would benefit from reaching out beyond my comfort zone a little bit more. So maybe this is a reminder to me too.
Maybe. But honestly, like I feel like it's up to you. Like, there's no right answer. People might try to convince you that there's a right answer, but I feel like it's just about if you want to be in your comfort zone, you feel like you're successful in your comfort zone. Maybe that's a nice place to live.
Yeah, I like it pretty well here. So cool. Well, Daria, we're reaching the end of our time. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about before we give folks their homework?
No, this has been really really great to hear it from your perspective as someone who's more of a specialist, and I hope that anyone listening has kind of heard something that made them analyze or think about what position they're in and what position they want to be in.
Awesome. Yeah, very good. And that leads in perfect to our homework. So we're not saying that you should be one or the other, but we are saying that you should be intentional. And this can change over time. None of this is set in stone. But here's your homework. We want you to take 5 minutes to think about whether you want to be a generalist or a specialist, and then write down 3 things you can do to get your career to go in that direction. So if you're not already getting yourself all of the back end only tickets or whatever whatever it is, write down some specific things. And one of those things, just as an idea, is to talk to your manager about your career goals. That I think they can help you a lot. If they're a manager that's worth their salt, they will help you get that accomplish that goal. So, anything to add to that, Daria?
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Even just sometimes, like you said, just starting the conversation, because there might be space for you to do whichever one you want. But if you haven't verbalized it, like there might be an opportunity sitting there for you that you don't realize yet. So just starting that conversation is a great first step.
Absolutely. There could be a thing that your manager's like, my goodness, who am I going to get to write this groovy, Gradle build
Yeah,
pipeline thing, man? And then you come around and you're like the answer to their prayer. So yeah.
exactly.
Very good. Well, Daria, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. We have another episode that we're going to record, so folks look forward to that. We're going to talk about TypeScript. It'll be fun. But for now, we'll just say ta ta. Thanks, Daria.
Ta ta.